he was like, yo, you need to put this out and you need to be in a band. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Da, da, da. And he was like, hey, if you do this, I'm going to put you on my fest. Like that's how badly I wanted to do this.
Just
And I was
dangle the
like,
carrot.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. I'm sitting down with someone who is best described as their Instagram bio, which is a dad, business leader, and punk. Aram from the band Change. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I hope that we had to just run this because I realized my audio recorder was being fussy. So I was like, I really wanted to make sure that I got that intro down because I had pre-written that for this podcast.
Awesome.
So Aram, can you just tell me, give me a proper introduction about who you are, the bands that you're a part of, and some of the past projects as well, because I know that you had mentioned that as well.
Absolutely. So my name is Aram Arslanian. I was born in Montreal, grew up in Calgary, and I live in Vancouver now. I sing in a hardcore band called Change, and we're a straight edge band with a vegetarian message. I was also in Champion, Keep It Clear, Union of Faith, Betrayed, The First Step, and I also ran React Records.
Yeah, and the tenure of all the stuff you've been involved in, I'm sure, is going to come up in this podcast. As far as how I like to intro all of our guests here is getting a little bit of context on how they got into just hardcore in general, because I'm always trying to push the idea that it's not just through one vein when it comes to the heavier DIY kind of music. So tell me about growing up in Montreal and how music was first introduced to you and how that propelled you into some of the projects that you got involved in.
Totally. So I was in Montreal till I was 5, and then I moved to Calgary. And so it was like really different. And of course, I was a little kid, so like this is little kid memory. But in Montreal, I was surrounded by a big Armenian community. So my father's Armenian, and my mom is Irish. But in Montreal, there's a huge Armenian community, and a lot of my extended family lived there. So when I was a little kid, I remember being surrounded by family. When we moved to Montreal, my dad was a water engineer, and the recession was starting to hit Canada, like the big recession that happened in the 80s. And basically my dad was given a choice, like, you can move or we can lay you off. And so he decided to move the family to Calgary. And we moved out there. And like, we had no family out there. There was a small Armenian community that we're plugged into, but it was almost like going from like the forest to the desert, and like, you're kind of looking for like a tree to like have some shade in, because we moved there and I went from a very culturally diverse community that we lived in that had all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds and we moved to Willow Park, Calgary in Alberta. And it was like all like Caucasian North American names. And of course, like, I'm a Caucasian person, but my parents come from like a culturally diverse marriage. And we have these exotic sounding names. And like from day one, like people were calling us like terrorists, making fun of our names. And like, I have never, like, from like probably the age of 5 up until, I don't know, like 16 years old, I was fighting constantly, like constant fist fights. And it was weird because I was like a real sensitive kid, and like, I'm a sensitive adult, but like also I was like real sensitive. So I'd get like really hurt, and I always really I wanted to fit in really bad. And of course, it's just like, you just keep getting rejected and pushed away, especially as a little kid. The more that you want to fit in, the more they're going to push you away. Right. And so I grew up in this kind of apparently safe little community, but I got bullied like crazy, both my sister and I. And then there was some stuff going on in the family where there was like some mental health concerns, and like the family, it was very chaotic in the home, and you wouldn't know from the surface. And I don't want to say anything like too wild here, because like my parents are like really, really good people, but it's almost like, imagine 4 people living in a house who are just like almost like roommates. You know what I mean? Like, of course you'd meet up for dinner and breakfast and all that kind of stuff, but we lived like almost like essentially different lives. And my parents didn't know a lot about what was going on in my life and all the stuff that was happening to me. So as I got a bit older, like I was fighting. And then I find skateboarding. And skateboarding was like, this is it. This is the thing. And I get into skateboarding, and I think I was like grade 4 or 5. A couple things happened all at once. My sister got Combat Rock from the Clash and Beastie Boys License to Ill, like got both of those tapes for her birthday. So it was like maybe grade 5, I think. And I got into skateboarding around the same time. And it was just like deep dive into counterculture, like, yes, this is it. So I got really into skateboarding, and like got decked out, got all the like, the clothing of the time, like all that stuff. And when skateboarding eventually kind of went away from most people, like that was my first sticking point of like, no, this is my thing. Like, this is what I'm doing. The interesting thing for me, at least, was that, my sister got these 2 tapes, and I could have been like, oh, and I got into the Clash and that was it. I never looked back. But I actually got into the Beastie Boys License to Ill, and I never looked back. I was like, got really into what would be like kind of early-ish rap, hip hop kind of stuff. And I wasn't like deep in the culture. I wasn't like finding like mixtapes from New York in the 80s. I was getting stuff that was readily available at like a record store in Calgary, Alberta. But I was like one of the only kids that I knew that was into rap at that time. And so like whatever the counter of the culture was, I was super into. And that, so skateboarding, hip hop, got into all that. And that led me into junior high. And in junior high, the fighting just like shot up, because now not only did I have this like exotic sounding name, my parents were from like this mixed marriage, my sister and I both kind of like, we're both characters, you know what I mean? So like we're kind of lightning rods for getting bullied a bit. And we also stood up for ourselves. And like I was a dude that would always stand up for myself. So like, and then add in being into like music that wasn't the popular music at the time. Like I literally remember when Def Leppard like Pour Some Sugar on Me, when that was like this huge thing. And I was like, oh, this is so weak. Like this is weak. And like, I was listening to, and again, I'm not trying to have bragging rights, but I'm listening to like Eric B and Rakim. Like that's the stuff that I was listening to. And like, I've got these like kids in my class that are like, pour some sugar on me. And they're just like really into it. And I was like, this is so lame. And then that I got kicked out of junior high in grade 8 for fighting too much. And it wasn't like kicked out. It was like basically like, you should leave because this is only getting worse. And it was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So I went to a different school in grade 9 that was more in the city. So like I was in a very suburban school, junior high. I went to one that was more in the city. And it was like totally diverse, like really, really, really diverse group of kids. And like everything changed, like now my name was not exotic. It was one of the many exotic names there. And it was like instant acceptance. But I carried a lot of like personal demons from like growing up the way that I grew up into that situation. I'll talk about later, but like, and it was there that I really got exposed to punk. I met this kid named Matt Lutmer, who's now like quite a successful photographer out in Victoria, I believe. His older brother's Toby, and Toby had like, I don't know, like whatever job you have when you're a teenager. And so he used to always buy all these tapes. And
with his like flyer route money or working at the local Timmy's or whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever his job was. And he like, so I had already, by virtue of just being into skateboarding, I was into like the really accessible bands. I was into like DK, like Dead Kennedys. I was into like, I'd gotten into like DRI. I was like into Metallica, and then I'd gotten more into like thrash kind of stuff. So I still liked hip hop, but I started transitioning towards more aggressive music. And then Toby, it was one of these 3 things. It was either Cro-Mags or Agnostic Front that he was like, you need to listen to this. And he put it on, and I was like, oh, holy crap, what is this? Because it was like thrash, but like just different. Like it just had a different attitude. And or like if it was Agnostic Front, it must have been like Cause for Alarm, I think. Or it could have been Cro-Mags, but that wouldn't have been like thrash based. But anyways, whatever it was, it drew me in. I was like, whoa, what is that? And like the street culture and the aggressiveness and just that distinct, like, I am not like you. Like we are different than other people. And man, like when you're a kid who searching for identity, been bullied, like felt like an outsider, I was like, that's it. But the fun thing is like I diverged because like I love really, really hardcore and thrash. But then I heard 7 seconds and that was it. Because 7 seconds for me was like the thinking man's band or thinking person's band. Like because I grew up like my father had gotten laid off despite everything, moving to save his job. He ended up getting laid off when I was very, very young and never really was able to get a job again because he'd grown up in poverty in Syria. So he wasn't able to get a formal education. So my mom ended up being the breadwinner of the family. So I grew up in a family that was essentially ran uh, in at the time what would have been considered a non-traditional way. And it was really good for me because like I got to have the experience of having like a strong woman, kind of showing me all of this stuff. And so my mom was a breadwinner. So when I heard like Not Just Boys Fun for 7 seconds, I was like, hell yeah. And like I started getting into these ideas. And then I got into 7 seconds, became my favorite band. 7 seconds with like Dead Nasty and Uniform Choice, like, Minor Threat, like all of this stuff. And that's what really brought me into it. Sorry, I
Yeah.
know that was a long
Yeah.
explanation, but
But I appreciate the timeline because I'm sure a lot of people listening and like there's aspects for myself even being a lot younger than you, probably in different generations, but always like I kind of had a similar experience in school, like always kind of being the weirdo as far as listening to certain styles of music, always getting bullied, and there was some flips for me. Like I wasn't someone who would like constantly stand up for myself, and the few times that I can remember that I did, I was like punished for defending myself. In addition to the bully who was harassing me, so I once I found like I think the biggest thing that people latch onto in hardcore is the lyrical content because it's able to see like, hey, I'm not the only one who's feeling this way. I'm not the only one who feels this way about animal rights, about global warming, or like climatary social issues. So there's so many aspects, even just on like the self-reflective stuff. So obviously, like we've unpacked a lot of the history. But how did you go from Calgary into living where you are in Vancouver now?
So I started playing in local bands, and I played in this band called All Rights Reserved. And there was this like little crew of bands: All Rights Reserved, Road Crew Orange, and a band called Y. And we were all like hardcore-ish, like Road Crew Orange was by far of the three of us was like legitimately a great band. They have two demos, One Way System and Cement Wall. And One Way System and Cement Wall are both totally sick. One Way System's got like a bad recording that the snare drum's hard to hear, but like Cement Wall is like literally a killer record, a killer demo. And this is like nobody was putting out like records in Calgary. Like we were just putting out tapes. So all of us grew up in the scene where like there had been Beyond Possession and there had been like 6 Feet Under, like the Calgary version. Winnipeg had had Personality Crisis. Like there had been like a punk slash kind of hardcore slash thrash scene. And then it just died. And we came in just as it was dying. So I saw like Ninth Configuration and stuff like that when I came in. But the next thing that came in was like grunge. And it was weird because like we were all into like 7 seconds, Minor Threat, Black Flag, all these things. But the only bands playing were like bands like Ramada Gods and Agony Pipe. And I'm like, I don't want to like be negative on these bands because like it was cool seeing live music. And because grunge was kind of getting big, our scene was huge. Like there'd be like 200 or 300 kids at shows. It was nuts. And like these bands were like, oh, there was another band called like Jonestown Punch. Like, dude, it was nuts. And it was really cool to be a part of. And I'd go to these shows and I'd buy their records and I'd buy their tapes. And they kind of fit into my like lexicon of music that I would like. Cause like I like grunge bands just fine. But like there was always this like, oh man, like I really want something that's a little bit more aggressive, more hardcore, more like ethics based, all that stuff. Um, and so I got to tell you, like these bands also were like, it was like ridiculous. Like, 'cause it was like guys that like, of course now I'm 45. Back when I was a kid, they seemed to be like 45, but of course where I'm at now, they were probably like 20 years younger than I am now. But it seemed like these total adults that were going to be these rock stars, but they were just playing like all ages shows and they're like bar bands. And if you're someone who's like into prairie kind of punk or hardcore, they're worth looking up. Ramada Gods maybe less so because they were kind of like funk grunge. They're okay, but Agony Pipe actually was like pretty good. And there was this band called Cruel Hool, which was like a thrash band. And Cruel Hool, I asked the drummer who the drummer was like the nicest guy. I was like, dude, what does Cruel Hool mean? He's like, when you take like a really harsh toke off of like the bog, it's like a cruel hool. And I was like, I got it.
Cruel
Anyways,
Hool 2020 is like the new term that needs to come back from the
totally.
era.
So me and all my friends, we wanted bands that we liked to exist in the city. And there was like no bands that were like that because they were all kind of more grunge bands. So we all started starting bands. And it wasn't this like big calculated thing like let's start bands, but like, we'd be passing around like there was no internet then. And like getting zines in Calgary had to like mail order everything. So like you'd be like, oh, like, hey, check out this record. And like the next thing you know, you've got like this like, oh, like, wow, like, holy crap, here's TSOL, or like, holy crap, here's Uniform Choice, or like, here's this like band. And like you're discovering these bands just from your friends. And then your friends will start these bands. And as you get these records, like a Husker Du record or something, you can see everybody's sound is evolving as these records kind of ripple through us. So why Road Crew Orange and All Rights Reserved all kind of started around the same time. This is about 1990-ish, maybe 89, 90. And All Rights Reserved was really influenced by 7 Seconds, but we were like, I don't want to say we were terrible, but we weren't good. Like we were like little kids. Like none of us knew how to play our instruments. And it was me, this guy Jeff Casey, Matt, and this guy named Jeff McEachran. And we started our band, and we all started playing hardcore-ish kind of music. And so next thing you know, we built up a little scene because there were other kids that wanted that more kind of aggressive style. And again, and there was that like tension between like the grunge band, like the kind of older guard, and then us. And like there was that like beef that almost always happens between generations. Like we're the young kids, like we know better than you, and they're like we're the old kids, we know better than you. Anyways, we start this stuff. It gets a little recognition locally, but the real turning point for me is when this band from Edmonton came to Calgary called Blindside, and it was the first straight up real hardcore band, like straight edge band. The singer is this guy named Anton, who is like a big skinhead. First dude I ever knew who had a Judge shirt and like would put X's on his hands, and I was like, holy shit, like this is unbelievable. And like I'll still stand by the Blindside demos. They're great. Like they're great for the time, but they're just great. And so when I saw them, and then they invited us up to Edmonton to go play with them, because we were like kind of hardcore-ish enough for them to kind of support us. And then we got in with those guys and this band from Edmonton called the Glory Stompers. And then all of our bands started the slow, steady march to becoming more like real deal hardcore bands and like honing our craft. So by the time All Rights Reserved broke up, we put out 3 demos. And the third demo was kind of like very influenced by what was happening in Seattle and Vancouver at the time. So Strain and Undertow. And it was like still not very good, but it was like much better than we started with. So when All Rights Reserved finally dissolved, I took a shot at college for a year. I went to like SAIT, and then I was like, this is not for me. I'm going to move to Vancouver. So I moved to Vancouver for, I don't know, a few months. Played in like just some like local bands, like nothing wild. Moved back to Calgary for a couple years. Played in some kind of like ebullition style, like more political kind of bands that were not very good. And then like that, I'd say that was like the most forgettable stuff that I ever did. And then I moved back to Vancouver, and that's where it all like really became a thing. So I went back to Vancouver to go to university, and I went to UBC. And I did not go with the intent of actually caring about school. I solely moved here to play in hardcore bands because, like, as if I cared about school. But I was doing school, have a reason to be here, and to like hang out and be around hardcore. And I started going down to Seattle a lot. I became friends with the whole Seattle crew. And the next thing you know, I was in a band I played in Burden slightly. If anyone like Burden was this really cool band from Vancouver that I was not a member in. I just would fill in for them. And I was filling in for Burden. doing a bunch of other stuff. Then I played in this band called Face Tomorrow, which is like not good, like not good at all. But the thing about Face Tomorrow is like where I really started like figuring out how to do a band. So like we did a demo and then we did a 6-week US tour on the demo. And that's when I really started like applying myself to stuff. Did Face Tomorrow, finished that. Later on that year, got asked to be in Champion, and then from there, the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is something that is, I think anyone outside of hardcore music is like, wait, you're just moving to a certain part of the world to be a part of that scene, but like, you know, uh I started Scoped when I was living in Winnipeg, and then my wife's family is all in oh, sorry, my mic was turned down a bit. My wife's family is all in Alberta. So when we got married, the same year that we got married, my folks moved out to Ontario. So we're kind of in the middle of both, and we were like, let's, instead of flipping a coin of who we visit for Christmas and Thanksgiving, let's be close to one and only have to travel for the latter. So
Right.
we picked Alberta, and we were originally we were looking between Edmonton and Calgary, and I was like, I really wanted to move to Calgary just because the fest is here, and I knew the scene overall at the time when we were moving was just a little bit more, I guess, rich with bands and happenings and whatnot. So, but I think anyone outside, like, no, I don't think anyone's moving. Well, I guess there might be some people who are like, I'm moving to Nashville because they love country music or something like that. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it is it's a very when you when you're especially at that age when you're trying to, like, your priorities are maybe a little bit different in line of what you want to be surrounded by.
Totally.
So you've been in Vancouver for a long time, and I definitely want to talk about the current band that you're a part of, Change. You guys kind of like popped up. So just to give a little bit of history for anyone who's listening or watching that might not know, you guys played your first show at the beginning of this year at Just Another Gig in Tacoma, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And honestly, I was watching that set last night, and I was like, January feels like years ago as far as like just how this year has progressed. But I was watching that set, and it was very. I have to commend you for the fact that, like, everything that you guys played on your very first show sounds like exactly as you guys recorded it and put it out. Like, nothing has like really evolved or changed, or even lyrics on that side. So I have to applaud you for that, just as far as keeping that consistency. But yeah, tell me, before we get too into it, can you just tell me the origins of why you wanted to start Change, and the focus that you wanted to have on that band versus past projects?
Yeah, and thank you for that. So I like when all the stuff came up around Champion, and the singer of Champion, it was like devastating. I mean, it was devastating, not just for me, like for lots of people. And it was a band. It had been a band that had been a part of a lot of people's lives. And when something that you're a part of and you put so much into yourself has been used to hurt people, I don't know. Like I don't know how I can put into words what that's like when you're basically. So like in Champion, I wrote most of the music and almost all the lyrics, and like I really I like I put a lot of who I am into that band, and I drew a lot of who I went on to be from that band. So like you get this moment in your life where you're like, holy crap, like this thing that I've been so proud of and that has played such a pivotal part of my life has like been used to really, really like prey on people and hurt people. And it took me a long time to cope with that, and I'm still coping with it now. And I'm only at a point now where I'm more comfortable talking about it. Like I really when I talk about it, it's difficult to talk about it for lots of reasons. But one of the reasons is I always want to be sensitive to how I talk about it, because like I don't want to talk about it in a way that is not measured, because I can't see who's going to listen to this. Like I can't see how they're reacting to it. So I don't want to cause any harm by talking about it too loosely. I don't want anyone to have like, cause I don't know, maybe someone's had a bad experience as a result of that band. And I want to be thoughtful of how I talk about it for that reason, but also because I was one person in that band, and I don't want to speak for the other guys in the band or the other people that had been in the band and was there. Also just say, finally, it's like, I don't want to center myself in that. Like like there are a lot of people who had very bad experiences as a result of that. And like, I don't want to, anything I talk about, I don't want to take away from that, or I don't want to be like, oh, and I went through all this terrible stuff and let's focus on me. I'm telling it more as like an adjunct to how I got to doing change. And that's why, like, I'm talking about it this way. Um, so when all that stuff was revealed and there was all the stuff that happened around it, like, it was like, I don't know, man. I really, I I was going through a challenging time at the same time, because I'd also like, I had been working in this one company for a long, long time, and we parted ways kind of in the middle of all of this stuff around Champion, and it was just like a really challenging time. And first of all, I wanted to digest everything and really take in what had happened. And I also, as best as I could, like try my best to kind of like just take it in and process it. And then also it's like, dude, I don't know. Like I felt like I had to just take some time. And so I took some time. I did a lot of work, personal work around all that stuff, and did a lot of thinking and a lot of soul searching and a lot of talking to people and all of that stuff. And a few years ago, I was like, I'd had there'd been a bunch of stuff that had been recorded um, with Dave and Carl and Alex, and it was sitting around. And I was like, you know what, man, I got to process this stuff, and I want to try and do something. I want to do something that's going to help me process this stuff and put it into place. And it wasn't like I'm going to go start a new band. It's like, I've got unfinished business. I got to process this stuff. I got to focus on it. And so part of like the process for me of processing all of this was to go and start working on lyrics, and go back and start working on those songs, and like write lyrics, and try and get through it. So I started doing that a few years ago, and it was like brutal, and it was good, and it was all of that stuff. Um, and um, as I was doing that, I did three different versions of the lyrics. Like the first version was like, I hadn't written lyrics in years, so like they were just like free form, like like all of this, like real intense, like depression, sadness, like anxiety, like guilt, like all of it, right? And then I looked at it, I was like, whoa, it's like it's not very eloquent, super long, it's very self-indulgent. And then like I rewrote them again. And then I was like, so like literally like song after song, just rewriting it. And then I got down to like a third version where I was like, hey, this is okay. And I really focused on the economy of expression, which I want to talk about later.
Sure, yeah.
But I got all this stuff down and I recorded it. And like I was recording it and I was having like super intense anxiety about it, like really, really facing a lot of stuff. Cause not only had that situation revealed like some really big stuff that for an entire community of people, um, it had kind of like caused me to really hold a mirror up to myself and like really like do some like good self-examination. And like I really thought a lot about like who I was, like what do I like about myself, what don't I like about myself. And like I did a lot of like personal work to just get to a better place of how I feel about myself and how I interact with the world. So as I was doing this, the word change just came to me one day. I was like, this project is called Change. And so I just called it Change, and I finished the record. And I wasn't going to do a band initially. And I just sent it to a couple friends, and everyone came back and was like, you need to do this. You need to do this as a band. And not just because they liked the record, because they'd seen like what I'd gone through in the past, in the few years, and just like, dude, I like really went through a thing. And again, because we're talking about this in context of the band, I want to be really thoughtful of like, I don't want to like spin this as like, oh, this like poor me story, because like
Yeah.
there was serious harm done to people as the result of the Singer of Champions. So I don't at all want to make my story centered in there. I'm just talking about this chapter of what happened.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I think like a lot of I'm kind of the same way. Like I hate like confronting people about a certain thing, and I never want to like just throw someone not under the bus, but just like throw a topic in that sense. But I think you're handling this very eloquently, because I think a lot of people can get caught up in the, well, I don't know the full story, and ultimately like you don't need to. And we're talking about like the transition, but I appreciate um how you're mapping us to that.
yeah. Well, and like it's something I would say is like I think people should know the full story as much as people who had these experiences, these victims had the experience, as much as they're comfortable to talk about it. And there's stuff out there for people to read. I think it's important because like um, these are important conversations for men to have with each other. And I'll get into that in a bit. But so I finished the record, and friends really encouraged me, like really, really, really like push me on it. And we're like, like you need to do this. And very specifically, Chris Williams. So I recorded the record with like Dave, Carl, and Alex, but they didn't want to do it as a band. And I definitely made it an option. But like there's some like historical stuff. Like we've been in Keep It Clear together, and like, there'd been like a little, I wouldn't like, definitely not beef, but like when Keep It Clear, it was definitely someone's band that I joined. And like there was always like a little sensitivity around like whose band it was, So like I always tried to tread lightly in that space. But when it came to change and the stuff that we wrote, like I mean, I was a primary songwriter. Like I wrote the songs, but like everyone in the band definitely like broke down the songs, rewrote them together. So like everyone wrote those songs together. Like I came up with the primary ideas, except for one of them, which Dave came up with. But that process was like a little challenging because there's just like, like two of the guys in the band, me being one of them, have like strong personalities. And like, kind of like we started clashing a bit. So like when we'd initially recorded the songs, there were some like not good feelings, not anger, but like also kind of like, I don't know if I want to play in a band with you anymore. And then when I went and finished the stuff, like I wouldn't say those guys were like supportive, but I wouldn't say they weren't supportive. They were just like, yeah, like whatever you want to do. And then when I finished it, I was like, hey, I want to do a band. If you guys want to do it, you're up. And they all declined. And I was super bummed. Like I remember the day they all declined because they all kind of declined at once. And it was like, ugh, it's like almost like you're like applying to a job and you get like hard rejected. I was like, oh, but I thought about it, like, I gave it 24 hours and I thought about it. And I actually kind of felt like, I guess a bit relieved because, like you're going into a band that has this like already kind of tension into it. And I just didn't want that. If I was going to do something, I wanted it to not have that tension. And I think they wanted that too. So it was like, we're all still friends. Like it's cool. But like also it had been literal years since we recorded these songs. And like in that time, two of them had gotten married, one of them had a kid, one of them didn't live in the country anymore. So it wasn't like doing the band would have been easy anyways. And those guys knowing me, I don't do anything halfway. Like if I'm going to do something, I do it. So it was a good decision. But Chris Williams had been super supportive of me putting out the record. So he was the first guy I asked, and then came Mike, then came Jeff, then came Matt, and we created this band. And so the record was already done. We became a band. We played that first show, and yeah, man, it was sick. It was totally awesome. Great response. And from there, we've just like continued to do stuff, and we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah, and as far as like I guess the second I guess like call it live iteration of change was nowhere near North America. So tell me about that process where you guys go to play. I don't know if Jag is necessarily like a like let's just call it a mini fest for the sake of the conversation. But you guys went all the way across seas to play to not only play a show but a series of shows on a tour. So how does a band that didn't have I think you guys had maybe one or two songs out at that time go out and then play Europe. It kind of goes it strays away from the normal hardcore roadmap is concerned for sure. But I love it. So I'd
Yeah.
love to know the behind the scenes of that.
Thanks, man. So again, you kind of gotta know me. Like anyone in my world, and they can say this in both a really good way or like kind of a challenging way. That like I never do things by half measures. So I'm not like kind of into something. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I don't run like I'm not like one of those people that just gets into something and is like, oh, I'm not now. I'm not into it. Like I'm into it. I'm into it.
Yeah.
And I do it fully. And it's the same way I apply to my business. It's the same way I apply to like anything.
Yeah.
And so I knew if I was going to do this band, I was going to do the band. And if I'm going to do the band, that means I'm going to do it in a way that is meaningful to me. So, like, I put out when I started sending out the record to people, the first or second person I sent it to was my friend Gabby in Spain, who does a fest called "Can't Keep Us Down." And I sent it to Gabby, and he was like, "Yo, you need to put this out, and you need to be in a band." I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that." Da, da, da. And he was like, "Hey, if you do this, I'm going to put you on my fest. Like that's how badly I want you to do this."
Just
And I was
dangle the
like,
carrot.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. He was like, "Listen, I got a whole open spot for you." But for his perspective, it was like, there's no benefit for him to put us on this fest. He's already a successful fest. It's like totally sick.
Right.
It's not like some unknown band is not going to draw people in. He's doing that literally because his friend is lost. Like I was just really lost at the time. And he was like, he's trying to give me like a light in the dark, like do this, here's a destination. And that works well in my head. And so, um, like we kind of do it. And then sure enough, he's like, "Okay, you're doing the band, you're going to be on the fest this year." And I was like, "Well, okay." And then Robert from Refuse Records, who's in Europe, was like, "Hey, I want to put this out." And then Evan from React was going to put it out. And so I was like, "Hey, Robert, we're going to come over and do Can't Keep Us Down." And he was like, "That is such a wild idea. I'm all in. Let's do it." And so Robert books this tour, and man, it was sick. It just felt right. Like we play just another gig, and it was really cool. Second show is in Europe in front of like a crazy amount of people, and like it was just, I don't know if I can describe it. It just felt like the right thing. And we're there with like all of our friends because I've toured Europe like a number of times, so like
Yeah.
all of my friends were there, and like all of Chris's friends were there, and like Jeff had toured Europe a lot. Like all of our friends are there, and it just felt like instead of feeling we went to Europe, it just felt like we went to the next town, and it was like
But everyone's
sick.
speaking all these different languages, and
Right?
people are
Yeah,
driving on the opposite side of the road.
totally. And it was like, dude, the show was nuts, like totally nuts. And then the tour was incredible. And like there were some shows where there was like 20 people, and there were some shows where there's like hundreds of people.
Sure.
And like we weren't the premier band, like like there were shows where we were the headliner, but it's not like it's not like we were like some huge band that was coming through. But it had this just feel of like you got to go earn your stripes again as a band, but people were also like interested because of like our other bands, and it was cool. Like the tour was sick, like really, probably in the top three of any European tour I've ever done. It was really cool.
Was there anyone on that second show in Europe that's like, wait, this is your second show? Like just like the set that you guys played at Jag, like when I was watching, shout out to Bolton, he was the one that filmed that show. Um, just you guys were just like so well oiled as far as just playing together. So like I was just surprised if there's any like funny little reactions to people in Europe being like how new is this band?
Well, like, so the people there who knew me, they know me. So they were like, "Oh yeah, like, of course that's what he would do." Like, yeah, like it was like a logical leap for anyone who knows me well. Um, and for everyone else, I think they were just like, "Cool." Like, there might have been that conversation, but more so it was like, I don't know, people were just psyched. Like the style of hardcore we play is not like commonly played now. So I think there was like, people were warm to that idea. We're guys who've played in bands for a long time. And like, honestly, I think a lot of people, yeah, like they were just psyched. They were psyched that we were there, and they were psyched that we were playing. And it was just cool, man. It was a really cool time.
Yeah, it just got me psyched just seeing like, yep, we're going to Europe and seeing all these photos that you guys were posting, and I was like, I am, you know, I love when bands go against the grain as far as what called the traditional method of like earning your stripes, like you mentioned. Like, oh, you got to play with the demo first, and then you can play this level of shows, and then you're upgraded to the next tier. And you know, a quick little anecdote for you is like, I play in a band that we're our first show was almost a year ago, and our plan is to release our official demo on kind of the anniversary of that, just because. And there's a number of things, COVID delaying things, as I'm sure you can feel some of those realities, and just like other trying to make sure everything was tuned right. But now that no shows are in the mix of things, it's almost like, okay, well, I have videos of 4 of our past shows, and then once the demo is out, we won't be able to, but people can at least go and watch those live videos. So,
What's the name of your band?
we're called Endgame. We're kind
Okay,
of like
cool.
a thrash crossover, hardcore kind of fusion kind
Cool,
of
man.
band. So
What do
I'll
you do in
send.
the?
Oh, I play guitar.
Okay, cool. Yes,
Yeah.
please send it over.
Yes. We should be getting our final mixes this week. So it's there's there's definitely we're definitely having fun as far as the demo. This is probably the first project that I've ever been a part of that's a little less concerned about it being like so, I guess, serious, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
we have a number of like random samples, like, oh, let's pull something from Scarface, and like, oh, here's a funny quote from Fast and the Furious, let's put that in. So like there's a number of things. So I'll definitely send it to you when I get it as well. Because you've been gracious enough to send me the Change LP, and I would love to talk about that for a few minutes for
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
But before we get super into that, um, this may be a level 1 question, but we were chatting before we started recording on just the importance of lyrics in hardcore is concerned, and there's a lot of bands that I guess are kind of got a lot of coal with the hype train going, and maybe their lyrics are a little less concerned about having something be thought provoking and more just like tough or hard or whatever. So I guess, like, why is lyrics important to you when it comes to hardcore music?
Great question. So before I do that, like I love like wild, like totally wild stuff. So I was
Okay.
listening to Never Ending Game yesterday, and I hadn't really checked them out. They were cool, definitely cool. I really like that, like God forgives, Never Ending Game doesn't. Like
Yeah.
I was like, that is so sick. Like that's like totally sick.
And I should say that as well. Like I love Face Wreck, Tsunami, Sedition, any band
Yeah.
that's like got those ridiculous just call outs.
Oh, man.
But
So
like you said, like when you guys went over to play Europe, the style of hardcore that you guys are playing is less, call it, trendy at the moment. So having something that's a little bit more classic, tried and true. But yeah, let's go back to that question as far as like what's the importance of lyrics for you when it comes to what you're writing.
well, I also want to shout out Pillars of Ivory, which is the
Okay.
singer of Death and the singer of Mind Force. It's just like it's so good, and of course, I love Mind Force. Mind Force are probably my favorite band right now.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, like for me, when I was young, and I think this is, and when I say I was young, I don't want to say this is a thing young people do. I'm saying when I was young,
Yeah.
and this is how I acted when I was young, is like I used to be like, hardcore's about this or hardcore's about that. It's like, listen, what the hell do I know what hardcore's about? Hardcore is about a lot of things to a lot of different people. And for me, hardcore was about um, having a place that challenges your ideas and exposes you to new ideas and like can kind of like be thought provoking. And kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, like one of the things that like is difficult about hardcore is the assumption that you're within community and the community looks out for itself, because like I'd say like there's a lot of examples now that we're all learning about where unfortunately that's just not true, right? Or it hasn't been as true as it should be.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think one of the things specifically, it's like, if you think about like straight edge or like, you have like whatever idea that has like this like kind of like implied moral foundation in it, it can be something that causes you to have a real blind spot. You just have like assumed like we're all good people, when in reality, like the stuff we were talking about earlier, it's like, no, like that's not true. And you can not drink and do drugs and not eat meat and still be really not a very good person. So like, or have, anyways. And so like, I want to be thoughtful of how we talk about lyrics about that, because like it's super important, but I'd say it's like not just about writing lyrics, it's about actually like living the stuff that you're talking about. And so that's like a part of it. But the other thing I want to talk about is like the idea of like as a hardcore scene, when people come together, people often find hardcore or punk because they didn't work. Things weren't working for them in other scenes. So you get into this space and you kind of find this home. And then you get into this kind of like, especially if you're someone who gets a little bit of success, like from a zine or a photographer or a show promoter or band or whatever it is, whatever you're doing. And you take up a certain amount of space and you don't want to lose that space. And I think like a lot of the things where permission, like people maybe either intentionally or unintentionally turn a blind eye has a lot to do with like, hey, I don't want to be socially rejected again. Like I was rejected when I was young. That's how I found punk and hardcore. And I think like people looking at behaviors and not calling them out, or looking at behaviors and maybe just like kind of unintentionally or intentionally turning a blind eye to them, or not noticing them, or whatever it is, comes from this. But the flip side of that is also like people just being very good at hiding behaviors, right? Like, like I think it's less easy now, but like people can like really like hide things, especially if you've got this whole like virtuous thing wrapped around you. Like I'm in this band and I'm a good person. So like when it comes to lyrics, I think there's a lot of stuff to think about there where it's like, hey, anyone can write good lyrics that position you as a good person. But like what I got to encourage, and I'm not speaking of this like finger waggling at other people, like saying you need to do this. Like, I mean, like, historically, like, I mean, it's a big, heavy, horrible thing that I learned in like really the assumption of like, hey, you can write whatever lyrics you like, but unless you know the other people with you are rolling with you the same way, it's kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
So the way I look at lyrics now is different. Like I would rather have someone write like, some like ignorant ass like mosh call out, but actually be about that. And that's what the people in the band are actually about, rather than someone write some like eloquent, like political thing, but then have people kind of acting all sorts of different wild ways based off of the platform of the band.
Mm.
And the thing about like having like well thought out kind of like thought provoking lyrics is it can kind of put you in this like hero position with people where they're like, oh, they're so wise, they're so knowledgeable. And that's like a wild space to be in. And you got to be the importance of being thoughtful of that is like more important to me now than ever. And so it's something I'm thinking about. So like the reason I'm forming that up is it's like the way that I wrote these lyrics, and very specifically the band that I built, or like the guys I built around the band. Like I've tried to do my best to be like very thoughtful about all of that. So like for me, it's having thought provoking lyrics is important if you're that kind of band and you want to be that kind of band. And for me, that's what part of what hardcore is about, is like thought provoking stuff. But like, don't even go into that space unless you kind of like, you can like really hold up that mirror and be like, yeah, like I'm actually about this. But I want to be really clear though, like it doesn't mean that I think someone writes lyrics and then they're that person as a fixed state. So for example, like, you did today that song Honesty. When I was a kid, I was like, honesty, like that's so cool. Like we should all be honest all the time. Like real like kind of Boy Scout thinking.
Right.
But then like, dude, people lie all day long. Like, I mean, like, like your friend gives you their demo and the demo sucks, but they're your friend. You're not going to be like, yeah, man, your demo sucks. Like you're going to lie. Like
Still
you're going to
love you
like,
though. Yeah. You're gonna
you're going to
you're
like,
gonna throw some like some sugar on the
totally,
featuring for sure. Yeah.
totally. So like for me, it was like, I think a lot of good lyrics are also like, should be aspirational. Like I aspire to be like this more often than not. I aspire to like embody this as much as I can, or to do it in a way that if I was going to tell my friend their demo was actually pretty good, even though it sucked, that you're doing it for like a reason that is like more compassionate and thoughtful. And like when I think of like thought provoking lyrics that have stuff to do more with like kind of challenging social norms, I for me, I really want to be in the aspirational space and be like, I aspire to be like this, and I try to be like this. And also I can recognize that like I fall down. I'm not like, I'm trying to progress rather than be perfect.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a huge point lyrically, and I think what you're trying to also say with all this is like, this is what works for me. I'm not saying this is should be the standard for everyone, because like if someone wants to write just a lyric that's like I am straight edge, and people can identify with that, then that's awesome. I have seen it go both ways where someone has been singing like straight edge anthems and then like years later down the line they don't apply to those ideals. So but yeah, I do agree that that just like that that recognition that we all have work to do, you know, in our personal lives, in hardcore, whatever it is, and aspiring to be great and you know, pun intended, change for the better. So
Yeah, totally.
out of the 13 songs, do you have a favorite song or favorite song on the lyrical side of the content, or any specific lyrics that you're most proud of that you wrote?
Ooh, that's a good question. Like I love all 13 songs. And I could say I love them all equally. Um, hmm, which one do I like? So the song Unexpressed uh, is like very like they're all important songs to me. Unexpressed is like um, it's probably the most personal I've ever been on a song about something that like really impacted me. But it's written in the most simple way. So like when I talk about economy of expression, what I mean is like, you know, if you look at Betrayed lyrics, there's no economy of expression. I'm just like blah 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 blah. Like I write a bunch of stuff, and I think it's cool. Like I think it works. It worked well. But what I try to look at with this is like say as much as you can with as few words as possible, and write it in a way where it's clear what you're talking about, but it also gives some space for people to think about. So like, can I tell you about kind of like my approach to lyrics and like
Please, please.
so like when I played in Champion, I wrote lyrics and I used to use this term all the time, chain of strength vagueness. So
Okay.
like the intent of writing lyrics like that is like when you're not the singer of the band, but you're writing the lyrics, is you're kind of like you're trying to express yourself in a way where someone else is going to be singing what you're writing, right? So like
I see.
and and like it so it's tough there, right? Because you want to like not tough, but you want to think about how you position things. And so like I would write about things, but I would write about them in a way where it was vague enough that someone else could listen to it and they could apply it to like any situation. And that was Chain of Strength. Like if you listen to Chain of Strength, you could take any of those songs and make it about anything. Like you having a bad breakup with your partner, you and your friend no longer being friends, you like getting fired from your job, like whatever. Like, you can make it about anything,
Someone
and that's
screwing up your fast food order, getting a flat
yeah,
tire. Yeah,
like, totally.
yeah.
So you could make it about some deep, totally profound shit, or you could make it like ridiculous, and like you could actually take a chain of string song and apply it to like getting the wrong order at Taco Bell. Like you could do whatever, right? But that's what was cool about Chain of Strength. Like one of the things that was cool about Chain of Strength was like they had written lyrics in a way that was like ultimately applicable, right? And then it was the listener that added the depth to what they were saying, And so like I remember like, you know, people would talk to me about like you know, Champion lyrics at the time, and I would just be like, that's not at all what I wrote that song about. But it's cool.
Actually, you're pushing up the limits. Yeah,
Totally. But it was cool that like people could do that. When it was Betrayed, I was like hyper specific about what I was trying to write about.
yeah.
But the thing about Betrayed, it was always about usually about other people. Like almost all the time it was about other people, other situations. Closer Still, the Change record, literally all the songs are about me and about like my life, the things that I view, like what I was going through, what I continue to go through, the work that I did, the work that I'm doing, like all of that stuff. But I didn't want to have this super self-indulgent record. It was like, you know, just talking about myself. So what I intentionally tried to do was not be Chain of Strength vague. Like if Chain of Strength vague before was like on level 10, I wanted to take it down to like level 4. Like I wanted it to be applicable enough that people could apply it to their own world and their own thinking, but that it was specific. But I also, what I really tried to do is move away from using the word you. And like, I don't think I used it at all on the record. I might have used it once or twice.
That's really interesting.
Like, I didn't want to say like you this or you that, or you need to do it like this, or just look inside and like stuff like yourself. Like I wanted to get away from anything that was referring to other people or like othering a like or a kind of like third partying a term. I wanted to get away from
Yeah.
because like chain of strength vagueness has a lot to do with like you or yourself or you know whatever, or just look inside. And instead, I wanted to write it as if it was me directly talking to someone about what I was going through, but in a way where they could then take it and like apply that to themselves. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think like you or just those call it those easy words as far as like, oh, I'm done with you. I'm
Yeah,
sick
yeah.
of you, or I'm sick of the pain inside, or whatever it is. Like those are definitely easy versus making it a little bit more like you and I are having a straight up conversation. So I
Yeah.
will say as well, you brought up unexpressed. When I was listening to everything. I wouldn't say half asleep, but I was like, it's time for me to go to bed, but I want to make sure I do a proper listen to this record. And when unexpressed hit, I was like, okay, I need to like not just listen to the words, but like read them as well. So that was a standout track for me as well, both musically and lyrically. So
Thanks, Ben. Like writing these lyrics, they're written on two levels. So like one is a level that's intended to be a little bit more general. And so like someone could look at these lyrics and be like, it's like a typical, like kind of like, you know, like straight edgy kind of hardcore lyrics, and that's actually intentional. But then the deeper thing is if you know me, there are words in there that you're like, oh, he put that word in there specifically for that person, or it's about this situation or this or that. And some of the themes are like really clear. If you listen to Closer, you know what that song's about, like for sure. um, and if you listen to Unexpressed, you have to know me to know what that song's about. Like you have to really really know me. And it's like all of this stuff was intended to be like very much open book, but not in like in a way that is like gaudy or kind of like too much. So yeah, that's where I went. So there's a lot of intent put into lyrics, and like, man, when I say like I was like focused intensely on what every single word played with the other word, that was there. So if people look at this and be like, it's just kind of generic hardcore, it's almost like, dude, mission accomplished. Like I wanted to do that. Like I wanted to weave that stuff in a way.
well, that's pretty interesting that you bring up the term like generic hardcore, because like there is a lot of like things that you would expect from like a straight up hardcore band musically and lyrically on that, but the the creative like little additions that you guys have added on certain tracks is like honestly like really refreshing to me. Like um I'm blanking on the track name. I think it's the second song you guys put out, but it has that like reggae, like call it
Oh yeah,
bridge in the
beyond.
middle. And I was like, this is so sick. I never would have thought like, it like a lot of ideas, I think musically, if you put them on paper, sound ridiculous, but hearing them uh, worked out in the studio and all that, it's just like, okay, well, obviously this should definitely make the record. So I think that was a very good choice. Also, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about some of the specific tracks,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
but the 7 second just absolute ripper, which is just like I was like, wait, is that it? And I went and replayed it a couple times.
Access.
Yes, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love the straight to the point nature of a lot of these songs, but how you were able to kind of flesh things out and really, not trail too long in song length, but like the richness is definitely there. So I know that in the first show that you were saying that this record would have been out probably already, but with the nature of COVID and whatnot, did that kind of delay things on your guys' end?
Kind of. So like this record was supposed to be out a while ago. So let me tell you like what the story is.
Sure.
Um, so finished the record like a long time ago. Finished the record, like did all the stuff, kind of figured out what labels we are going to put it on, and then we hit on art. And like, dude, I had this idea. Are you familiar with the band Ride at all?
Ride. No, I'm not familiar with that band name. No.
It's like, check them out. They're really, really,
I
real
will
cool. So
definitely.
Ride had this record called Nowhere, where it's just like a big picture, and then Ride is embossed on it, and it has just this like vibe, like it's kind of like it's the photo of the ocean. It's like sea change, and like to look at it, you'd have to be like, whoa, that's intense. So my friend Sean Landy, who played in Strain, is a very talented photographer, and he had this great photo of the ocean, and I was like, oh, let's do a Ride kind of thing. And it was going to be like the Ride cover, Ride-esque kind of cover with change embossed on it. And we were going to have my friend John, who played in Common Cause and now plays in this super killer band called Wait. He was going to do the cover. We start going back and forth, and it wasn't quite working out. Like we weren't super happy about the idea, so that went back and forth for a while. And then Oli, who was in Get the Most and a bunch of Northwest bands, did a ton of art for React. He was going to do the cover, and then like that was kind of like going back and forth, taking forever. And then we went back to John, and like in the meantime, I had my friend Eric draw the tree that's on the front cover, and I was like, oh yeah, we should use that tree. And then John got back involved again. And again, it wasn't going that well. But then John came up with this idea for like the background behind the tree, and like it just like, dude, it was an awful process. Like I'm just gonna say, because like I had also tried to involve the guys who had been in the band who'd helped write the record, because I really wanted them to feel good about the final product. But like Carl didn't really, and when I say he didn't care, I don't mean in a negative way, but he was like, "No, it's good. You guys, I'm cool with it."
He was passive to
And
it.
Alex, yeah, and Alex and Dave cared, but like because they weren't going to be active in the band, they just cared more from like I like this or I don't like that, but they weren't necessarily coming to the table with ideas. And like the guys designing the record, they were like, it was just everything about it was challenging. And like, and everyone tried and like did their best, right? But also, it's not like we weren't a band that had played a ton of shows. We didn't have those iconic photos, that you want to have. But I also didn't want to do like a live shot. Like I just wasn't into it. So Ev, who does React, I had initially said, "Hey, we do the layout," but Ev was, he started this architecture firm called East Wing, and he was like, "Oh, dude, I can't." Like, he was the first person I asked, and then he just saw me going through like living hell, and one day he just called me up. He was like, "Brother, I can't stand to watch you suffer anymore. I'm gonna do this for you." And like we banged it out so fast because like we know each other very well, and he knew. And like the thing is, I wanted the record to have this real sense of of change, like of being different. Like you're becoming, you're evolving, you're doing something. So if you look at how the art is, like one half of the art of the tree is drawn in one style, and the other half of the tree is actually drawn in a totally different style with different tools. So Eric, who did it, it's subtle. You have to pay attention to it. Like you'd have to look. But I also wanted the whole thing to like obviously have a uniform choice vibe. I wanted the whole layout to kind of like be kind of wishing well / revelation. Ev just knew what to do. So like we cranked it out, we hammered it out. So by the time we got that done, it had been like months to get that done. We finally finished the art, and like then it's like production time. Then was when COVID was the real issue, because like production time was like going to be forever. And we thought about putting up orders at one point, but it was like so many working bands, like bands that are actually bands that had to cancel tours. They were trying to like recoup some of their losses. So we're like, yeah, we don't want to like steal any of the thunder. So we just pushed it back and pushed it back. And then finally we're like, okay, we have to put it out now. And yeah, it's on its way. And the cool thing is, like, I'll say this, I haven't said this to anyone, like the packages are going to have a bunch of stuff that you would expect with like old React releases. So like there will be extra cool stuff in there. I'm not going to say what, but anyone who mail orders, you're going to mail orders the record, you're going to be psyched. If you buy it in a store,
you're going to be taken care of for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think like I think there was some similar things on, we were just mentioning like my band putting out a demo, and I think that there was almost like, aside from just like, oh, COVID and all that and trying to figure out all that, there was also a number of other big social things where people were feeling uncomfortable about like taking any amount of attention away from that. So yeah, I feel like obviously we need to be hyper focused on those issues, but now it's like I think that there's a little bit more, I guess, space for that, and so anyhow, we should probably start wrapping up the podcast. I've been loving this hour conversation. I hope that we can do a second one in the future, because I had so many other questions about some other aspects of your life, but I really wanted to focus in on the record and help promote that. Aram, what we normally do to bookend this podcast is a favorite mosh story. And so that doesn't necessarily need to be I did this crazy move at this fest 20 years ago and broke this guy's nose. It could be something that you saw at a show that you were playing or a show you were just attending. Anything that's like first to your mind is how we end the show.
All right. So DRI Thrash Zone Tour, McEwen Hall Ballroom, Calgary, Alberta. I'm like 15 years old, sold out show. Have you been to McEwen Hall?
I have been in that building. I haven't gone to a show at McEwen Hall, but I know the space, how things are laid out.
I walk in and like I can't remember who the openers were. They weren't memorable, but DRI plays, and I mean they were like just insane. The place is packed. People are doing monitor dives. Bones are getting broken. Like some dude did a monitor dive, feet first, landed on the ground, broke his legs. Like it was insane. Like it was, dude, it was complete mayhem. And like people are getting dragged out of the pit. Like it was like hurt. It was nuts. So I'm a little kid and I'm, like I don't do things halfway. So I'm like, I'm here. I'm going in. And I went in and legit got my nose broken. Like boom, pushed to the other side of my face, like smash, covered in blood. Finished the show, like watched the whole show, loved it. It was great, whatever. My parents pick me up, and like they dropped off their 15-year-old child, and they come to pick me up, and there I am with my nose on the side of my face covered in blood, and they're like, "Oh my God." And I was like, "This was the greatest night of my life. Oh my God, it's so cool. Like the greatest thing." And yeah, they had to take me to the hospital, and that was the first of the broken noses that I had from pitting. But yeah, that's my favorite story.
Yeah. Thankfully, your parents weren't like, "You're never going to a hardcore show again."
Oh, they couldn't have stopped me, man. There's no way they could.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, dude, this has been a blast. I have had, we've shared some laughs, but also some very things that I think both you and I and the people watching and listening can digest and really like think about. And I've already said this dad joke, but like hopefully apply those mindsets to have some change for the better. Is there anything that you want to plug as far as the record, when it's coming out, where people can support it, and any social links that I can put at the end here?
Yeah, please check out the 13-song LP, Closer Still. It's on React Records in the States, Refuse Records in Europe, and then Life, Liar, Regret Records in Australia on tape. Support all those labels. They're super, super cool. And the one thing I'd say is like, this is a line on the record and something that aspirational for me that I'm trying to aspire to every day. And I'm putting way as much focus as I can on this. Listen, speak, and act with compassion. And that is not easy. And I'm trying my best. And I would encourage other people to take that on as a discipline.
No, and I don't think that there's any better way that we can do that. Follow Change Hardcore on Instagram, Aram as well. Dude, thank you so much. I hope that we can do this again real soon.
Yeah, thanks, man.